Things get real for the Chicago Bulls as they take a tough loss to the OKC Thunder. We're going to be talking about the key takeaways from tonight's loss. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and you have found yourself on another episode of Bulls Digest. And so today, the Chicago Bulls get beat by the Oklahoma City Thunder 145-117. And I think really the key takeaway out of this game is that, look, the Thunder are a very good team. In fact, they are an elite team, and you just see that the Chicago Bulls are just not there yet. And so I think that that is just the bottom line here. And so before we go ahead and jump into the key takeaways from tonight's loss, I first wanted to go out and remind you that, look, 73.2% of you, that watch are not subscribed to the channel. So make sure that you go ahead and you slam dunk on that subscribe button. This means a lot to us here at Bulls Digest as we try to reach our end of the season subscriber goal. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the box score and look at the key takeaways from tonight's loss. And so look, we usually start with MVPs. I didn't have an MVP for tonight's game, but I do have, the player that I was most impressed with, and that is going to be Buzelis. I was very impressed with Buzelis, even though he finished with a negative 22 in the plus-minus box score. Super impressed with his defensive ability to give the Chicago Bulls some rim protection. In fact, I love the block shot that he had against Chet Holmgren, just really using his length. And the more that I continue to see that with Buzelis, again, I can just tell that once he gets stronger, he is going to be, I think, an elite defender in this league. I know a lot of people are really impressed with the scoring that you see from him, but I am going to say this, that he is going to be, I think, an elite defender in this league as well. And so 14 points, 7 rebounds, just an assist, but he had 4 blocks, negative 22, 5 of 12 from the field, 2 of 7 from downtown, and he ties a rookie record within the franchise. I believe it is Daniel Gafford, who also had 4 as well. And so that is another reason why I'm giving Buzelis that award for tonight, with just the player that I was most impressed with. He continues to look more comfortable on the offensive end, and I just think that this guy is a player that, he was a steal in this last draft. I think that the only difference here is that other players really got a chance to play a lot more at the beginning of the season. I think if he were getting these minutes and attacking just the way that he is now, I think he would be even a lot further along when you're starting to look at those categories and things like that. And so now, with that being said, let's go ahead and just really look at the rest of the box score and the key takeaways from everybody here on the team tonight. So we'll start there with Vooch. And so with Vooch, 11 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, a negative 24 in the plus-minus box score. Really not the same type of player that he was earlier on in the season, where he was on a complete tear. And I really do feel like, the energy probably changed a bit when he did not get traded. And then also, too, he got hurt. And so I think that, from a game-to-game standpoint, for me, it's all going to be about the energy that we see from Vooch. And I think that it's been a lot better. But I also think that this is the time where Billy Donovan has got to pivot, I think, a little bit more away from Vooch and start to utilize more of Zac Collins, and then also to Jalen Smith. Not saying that you're not using Vooch, but I think that this was maybe the example where we wanted to see some more of Jalen Smith, and we didn't. So we'll talk about that here in a moment. So next up with Coby White. And so look, Coby had a tough one, ends his 15-game streak of 20 points or more in this one. And look, OKC, you got to give them a ton of credit. This was more, I think, about OKC than it necessarily is about the Chicago Bulls, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But, you just see an elite team that defensively, they took away the things that the Bulls have been doing well, which is getting to the basket and getting to the free throw line. And so that is where I think Coby White struggled in tonight's game in only 23 minutes. Dalen Tery did get the start. And so, look, it wasn't the most impressive start as far as the points and rebounds and things like that. But look, 4 points, he had 3 rebounds, 2 assists, but he did not finish in the negative in the plus-minus box score. And also, too, it started off, it looked like it was going to be a tough night because he stepped out of bounds, I think, initially. And I'm thinking, oh, man, this is going to be a long night for Dalen Tery. But he hung in there. I think he was scrappy for the most part in 23 minutes. Didn't necessarily get it going from the field. He had been on a tear shooting the 3 ball, 0 of 2 tonight. But I still like the effort from Dalen Tery. it's going to be more of just kind of putting him out there and letting him kind of learn. And I think that this is something that he takes a step forward, even though statistically it just didn't look that great in the box score. And so next up, we're looking at Josh Giddey. And so Josh Giddey, look, here's what I liked about Josh Giddey tonight. So despite the turnovers, that was something that the entire team struggled with, which we're going to talk about that. But 15 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds. I still like the stat line that I got from Josh Giddey tonight. I think that he definitely went out there and competed with, everybody else, I think, defensively. And we're going to talk about the blown assignments here. But still, I like the effort that I saw from him tonight. 6 of 15 from the field, 1 of 5 from downtown in 28 minutes, negative 24 in the plus-minus box score. But still, like the fact that he went out there and got us some numbers here today. And so next, looking at the bench. And so with Zac Collins, and so comes in 2 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, negative 16, 15 minutes. And so would have liked to probably see him get some more minutes out there. I'm always loving the energy that I get from Zac Collins. And so I know he's kind of struggled a bit shooting the basketball, but still he's given us a ton, really, especially on this run. And so Zac Collins cannot fault the effort for him tonight. Jalen Smith, look, you got to give him a ton of credit for being the pro's pro. He's been in situations where he was not getting any game time, comes out tonight, takes advantage of it. 10 points, 6 rebounds. He had an assist. He also had 2 blocks, and he was a +8 in the plus-minus box score on 4 of 9 from the field, 0 of 4 from downtown in 18 minutes. And so I loved his approach coming off the bench. And so even though the 3-point shots were not there tonight, I loved the way that he was assertive on the offensive end. And really, I think that this is something that we can get from him. And I think that it's going to be Billy Donovan now taking the initiative and throwing him out there some more. And so next up, Julian Phillips. And so Julian Phillips, I believe he had a nice little step through finish in this game that I liked. 5 points, a rebound in 18 minutes of play. And so Julian Phillips, once again, I like the energy, much like I saw from Dalen, Tery. And again, I think that these are a couple players that are showing you that as they continue to grow a bit more, they can certainly be some pretty good role players with this team. And so next up, next player that we wanted to take a look at here was THT. And so THT got a chance to play some major minutes because this game got away from us. And so you just see exactly why a lot of people like THT, because he's a bucket getter. And so in this one, 16 points. He did have 2 assists, finished with a +12. He was 6 of 10 from the field. So Javon Carter, 5 of 11 from downtown, 6 of 14 from the field. He had 17 points, 3 assists, and 2 rebounds. And so, again, these are 2 guys. They're pros. They get some did not plays from the coach there, but they still were able to come out, take advantage of the moment when they were able to get some minutes in this particular game. But again, this is all about OKC. This is all about OKC being an elite team. And this just really shows us that, look, this team has a long way to go to be elite. And that's just the bottom line. And so I do like the young pieces. I like what we are seeing throughout this game. But, man, we did go out. We blew some assignments. I think defensively, you look at just the amount of open shots out there for Isaiah Joe and some of these guys. That was pretty inexcusable with that. And then the turnovers, once again, that is something that really hurt us. We're going to talk about that here now that we look at the team box score. But the turnovers and the amount of points that OKC got off of the turnovers, that was really huge in this game. And so, just a tough night for the Chicago Bulls. You chalk it up, you move forward. Hopefully we will give the Raptors the business here in this upcoming game. And so now let's go ahead and jump into the team box score and look at the key takeaways from that. And so, look, starting with the rebounds. And so I thought we would get out-rebounded, especially with the size that the Thunder had, but it was 44 to 43 OKC in the rebounds, and so not bad there. The Bulls hang in there. 20 to 14 as far as the turnovers were concerned, and so that was way too many turnovers for the Chicago Bulls. And again, OKC really took advantage of the turnovers that the Bulls had. And then next, the block shots, talked about how active Modest was, and so the effort there on the defensive end was great for the Bulls as far as getting these block shots. 7 to 6, we lead in that category. And then 54-54 was the tie in the points in the paint. You would think, okay, look, we had a decent game in the paint, but man, it all came down to the 3-point shot making ability for OKC. And so 17 or 11 to 7, in steals, that was OKC. 22 to 20 Bulls in the fast break points, and so not bad there as far as getting out and running. But here is where the game was just really won, because OKC 53.1% from the field, but 53.5% from downtown. I mean, they just hit everything out there. And again, there were countless blown assignments from the Chicago Bulls, and the Bulls didn't shoot bad in this one. 44.9 from the field, 31.4 from downtown, and so didn't really knock down the three-point shots at the rate that we necessarily wanted to. But that is just the ball game tonight, because 29 assists to 44 field goal makes, not too bad. But again, OKC just continued to make some big-time shots there on some blown assignments, and you just cannot turn the basketball over. And so, with that being said, look, tough loss tonight for the Chicago Bulls. I don't think it just was anything to do necessarily with the Bulls and the effort level and things like that. I think that it was more so attention to detail, period. Because when you're talking about turnovers, that's attention to detail. When you're talking about defensive assignments, that's attention to detail. That's something that you definitely have control over. But again, you got to do that. You got to come out there with the same energy and effort, which I think that the Bulls did. But you got to also to take care of the details of the game. And so anyway, let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking and the key takeaways from tonight's loss. And so again, we will be back against the Toronto Raptors here. And so I'm hoping that the Chicago Bulls can turn the page and move forward here. All right. And as we always say, go Bulls, and we will see you on the next one. All right. Peace.